I would like to call the Board of Administration meeting to order. And the first order of business is roll call. Ms. Hopper, please.
Henry Jones,
Here.
Margaret Brown,
Good morning.
Rob Fechner,
Good morning.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Present.
Lisa Middleton,
Present.
David Miller,
Here.
Stacy Oliveris,
Here.
Irene Ortega,
Here.
Jason Perez,
Good morning, here.
Ramon Rubicava,
Here.
Teresa Taylor,
Here.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Good morning.
Mr. President, all is in attendance with Shonda Wesley being excused.
Thank you, Ms. Hopper. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the April 2021 Board of Administration time agenda. Do I have a motion?
I
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Miller. Second. Second by Ms. Taylor. Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irene Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubicava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have motion being made by David Miller, seconded by Teresa Taylor. All ayes, with Shonda Wesley being excused on agenda item 2.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. The next item on the agenda is item 3, Pledge of Allegiance to the Flag, and I've asked Mr. Frank Ruffino to lead us in the pledge. Mr. Ruffino, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and it will be an honor. Please place your right hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffino. I will now go to, see if I can get my screen back here. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the board president's report. And for that, I will make a few comments. Let me begin by offering some words of support for our colleagues, families, friends, and CalPERS members in our Asian, American, and Pacific Islander communities. The violence targeting members of this community underscores the need to build a more equitable and inclusive society for everyone. Recently, the nonprofit Stop AAPI Hate reported nearly 3,800 incidents of violence and harassment against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the United States since March 19, 2020. Victims reported experiencing verbal harassment, physical assault, workplace discrimination, and other forms of abuse. More than 2/3 of these victims were women, and more than 40% were Chinese descent. Advocacy groups attribute this uptick to a broader xenophobia against Asian Americans during the corona pandemic. CalPERS stands in support of the AAPI community and strongly condemns these actions. We will continue to advocate for greater diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workforce and our financial markets because we know it will help us better serve and better represent our members. Now turning to another issue. A strong and representative democracy is the foundation of America's economy, and voting is our most fundamental right. As an investor of more than $450 billion, we believe the nation's companies have an opportunity to protect and preserve that right. This is not about politics or partisanship. The 2020 election was a win for our democracy. Amid a global pandemic, we achieved record-setting levels of voter participation while maintaining election integrity. The election was secure and certified by every state. Unfortunately, many states still have laws and practices that make voting unnecessarily cumbersome and election administrations inefficient and outdated. There are laws that are being pushed through legislatures across the country, potentially creating more barriers to voting. 47 states in the US are considering bills that threaten to roll back voting best practices. The bill seeks to restrict access, particularly for voters of color. It is imperative that we prioritize and continue to strive for a more inclusive democracy. It's good for the country, it's good for business, which in turn helps CalPERS' bottom line. In states across the country, we must raise our sights to creating a world-class participatory democracy that we can all be proud of. And finally, I want to remind our stakeholders that CalPERS and CalSTRS will be hosting a diversity forum on June the 22nd. We have a distinguished lineup of speakers. So please watch for that in your mail and be prepared to participate with us regarding that event. So with that, I will now turn it over to our CEO for her report. Ms. Frost, please.
Thank you, President Jones, and good morning, members of the board. I'll start my comments this morning regarding an update that Mr. Cohen had done at the Finance and Administration Committee yesterday. CalPERS has filed a lawsuit to protect member assets after discovering that a 25-year employee had illegally accessed 10 dormant retiree accounts and fraudulently directed approximately $685,000 to bank accounts in her control. Our 2,800 employees and professionals who work at CalPERS take a lot of pride in serving our 2.1 million members with the highest degree of professionalism, integrity, and accountability. That this could have happened in the first place is really unacceptable. This employee is no longer employed by CalPERS. The employee's actions were an abuse of her access, a breach of her fiduciary responsibility, and a betrayal of coworkers and all dedicated public employees. We have notified the 10 affected members and will make their accounts whole. We also notified all members who have email addresses on file with us. Over 1 million members were notified directly through that channel. We notified all 2,800 employees, and we notified our stakeholders through our stakeholder distribution list. Our website has this information as well as a copy of the lawsuit that we filed on Friday. Since this breach, all dormant accounts have been locked and a new policy was immediately implemented that would require 3 levels of security to access any of these accounts. CalPERS will exhaust every legal opportunity to recover the money that was stolen from these victims. And again, we're fully committed to the safety and protection of our members' retirement assets. Moving now to our return to work and remote work. As California begins to move forward with its reopening plan, we are closely watching the guidance coming from the governor's office as well as health officials. As more people have become eligible, which is great news, to be vaccinated, we're providing an increasing amount of communication to keep our members and our team current on the issues as they evolve. In addition, our health team stays closely in contact with our health plans through quarterly business reviews that provide timely COVID-19 updates on a number of metrics and measurements that are important to the system. How California's reopening will affect our return to office plan is still uncertain at this time. Some of us may be able to begin returning to the office sometime in late July or early August, but how many and at what pace does remain to be decided. As we have from the start of this pandemic over a year ago, we take our guidance from the state and from public health experts. For now, we'll maintain our remote environment for the majority of our team and revisit our plans in the coming month or two. The ongoing remote work plan means continuing to serve our members virtually also. We've just completed our second virtual CalPERS benefits education event of the year. And like the other two we've held virtually, attendance for this one was also very high. We offered 20 classes over 2 days that attracted just under 5,000 attendees, the majority of whom attended on both days. We did take in member feedback or participant feedback and added an interactive information center that allowed members to connect directly with our team for live questions in 19 different rooms. And those rooms received almost 2,000 visits. Another enhancement that we made was a resource center that provided topic-specific informational materials that members could download. It was accessed over 1,000 times. Satisfaction ratings for the classes and the event overall were in the high 90th percentile, which has been a positive trend. And our website data shows an encouraging trend there as well, that members are taking time to further explore more resources on their own. Turning back to the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, yesterday you were presented with the proposed fiscal year 21-22 budget for the organization. For the 5th consecutive year, we've held our positions flat. We've used our enterprise pooling plan to shift personnel where needed based on either customer expectations and customer needs or workload demands. And this has especially been true in our frontline customer service areas and in particular our contact center. The budget does include increases over the prior year due to factors aligned with our strategic goals or that are mandated, such as the likelihood that employee pay cuts implemented last year would be restored. I want to also note here that in response to the governor's call for a $5 million reduction in operating costs, at least as it would apply to CalPERS for fiscal year 21-22, our proposed budget does exceed that target by $4.7 million for a total reduction of $9.7 million, less than the original 2021 budget. Turning now to some outreach activities. In the last few weeks, I've participated in a number of events around climate risk and human capital related discussions with the World Economic Forum, as well as with our partners at Inclusive Capitalism. We're taking an active role in these organizations to build a risk framework that can be applied to all of the asset classes when it comes to our sustainable investments. We need to ensure that the kind of risk framework we're talking about can be applied across the entire portfolio so the effects of climate change or human capital or governance can be considered when we evaluate the risk we would be making in an investment decision we're taking today. And it is understandable from time to time, we do get questions about whether investors like CalPERS, who have a fiduciary duty to paying member benefits, should be so focused on these issues. But it is important to remember that our goal is to understand the long-term risks in the investment decisions, again, that we're making today. Staying engaged with our stakeholders and our members associations is equally important. And last week I had the opportunity to speak with members of the California School Employees Association during their annual retiree day. It was an event that brought several districts together from the Central Coast region to Southern California. And I really appreciated being invited to speak with them and to provide an update about the work we have ahead of us this year. This is one of my favorite aspects of the job, and I'm looking forward to doing more of these either virtually or as the state reopens. Turning now to some internal activities, we recently announced the recipients of this year's CalPERS Apex Award, which honors our team members for their dedication and commitment to excellence and service to our members. This year, we honored 21 team members. And these 21 team members were all nominated by their peers. And to be a recipient, they also have a peer review of that application. In the time that I've been here, award recipients have certainly express their appreciation for the recognition coming from their peer group. But above all, they're really proud to be of service to CalPERS and our members. We will hold a virtual award ceremony for them all next month. So just would like to wish congratulations to all of the recipients. On to June board activities. So looking ahead to the next time we meet for our full board meetings, we'll continue our work with the asset liability management process by reviewing the capital market assumptions. And then the health team will be providing preliminary health rate premiums for your review. And I'll close now with investment returns. And so fiscal year to date is 15. The 1 year to date is 25.5. This is through March 31st. The 5 year is 9.6. The 10 year is 8.1. And the 20 year is 6.8. And that does conclude my report, President Jones.
Henry, you're muted.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a comment. Ms. Brown.
Thank you, President Jones. Ms. Frost, I want to just echo your comment about CalPERS employees, about how dedicated and responsible they are, and how this theft by one employee does not reflect on the whole group, and we do appreciate all the work they're doing. However, I have had a lot of email and text about why this person isn't under arrest. And I know we can't share everything, but maybe if we could make a comment about the criminality of this, or who's responsible for that piece of it, would be helpful for the beneficiaries to understand. Because typically a civil suit comes after a criminal complaint. Thank you.
Yes, I'll see if Matt Jacobs would like to come forward and talk about the legal process.
Sure. As soon as we heard about this, Ms. Brown and all board members, I should start by saying good morning, Ms. Brown, President Jones, and all board members. Hello. Matt Jacobs, General Counsel. Yeah, as soon as we heard about this, we referred it to the CHP. They immediately started an investigation. They continue to investigate the matter. The prosecuting authority for the matter is the Attorney General's office. I've been in contact with the Attorney General's office. As far as I know, they intend to charge the case. They have not completed their investigation, but they fully intend to charge the case. And I've shared the complaint with them. They have no problem with us having filed the complaint. And so there you go.
I appreciate the update, and to the extent that you can, in addition to updating the board, is letting at least the team members know what's going on. I think it's critical. You know, something like this needs to not only be a financial punishment, it needs to be a criminal punishment, at least in my opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a very strong criminal case. No question.
Okay.
That's all,
Thank you.
President Jones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so no additional requests to comment or speak, Ms. Frost. So we'll now move on to agenda item 6. We have 6A, B, and C, and I'm going to pull item 6C. It's been requested by a member, and also at our Board Governance Committee back in March, we indicated that the committee discussed how the board shared responsibility for CIO personnel decisions should be implemented and determined, and that it will be resolved at the full board meeting in April. So here we are at this full board meeting in April. So I'm going to pull 6C, which is the Performance Comp and Talent Management Delegation Authority, and then ask for a vote on 6A and B, and then we'll come back to C. So do we have a motion on 6A
Move
and B?
approval.
Moved by Ms. Brown.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rufino. Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irene Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made, I believe, by Margaret Brown and seconded by David Miller.
No, Mr. Rufino.
Okay, thank you. And that is on agenda item 6A, and I believe also you mentioned 6B.
Yes.
And it's all ayes with Shonda Wesley being excused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Now we will go to 6C, which is the delegation authority, and we'll be talking to attachment 1, which is the Performance Compensation and Talent Management Committee delegation. Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I appreciate it. I just think I said this at the Board Governance Committee meeting. I think the shared responsibility with the hiring of the CIO with the CEO should be a whole board shared responsibility, not just performance talent management. So if we could change that delegation or remove it from at least the performance compensation talent management and move it over to full board responsibility is where I would like to see it. I think everybody on the board wants to see their own involvement in this, so it's not just committee members. That's my thought on that. Thank you.
Okay, so I see another board member would like to speak. So Ms. Taylor, if you could hold, and if you'd like to make a motion on that, we'll come back to you. So Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm of the same opinion with Ms. Taylor. I don't think when the board governance decided to make this a shared committee responsibility that they meant to give it to a subcommittee. They wanted to keep it for the full board. So if Ms. Taylor wants to make that motion, I would be her second to take this delegation out of perf and comp and put it back in with the full board.
Okay, we will come back to you, Ms. Brown. Ms. Paquin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also agree with Ms. Taylor and Ms. Brown that this should remain at the full board level instead of a delegation to the PCTM committee. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no additional requests to speak, Ms. Taylor, you want to make your motion? Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Miller.
I just wanted to weigh in here. I also support this. I think it's important, particularly because the full board, now that we are a committee of a whole for the investment committee, it also allows the investment committee to have a role in this, I think, which is really critical to ensure that, which wouldn't necessarily be the case if it was strictly delegated to the Performance Compensation Talent Management Committee alone. So I fully support this.
Okay, before I call on you, Ms. Taylor, Mr. Jacobs.
Good, because I was going to ask that how we did this.
Procedural. Mr. Jacobs.
I think that the procedure would be to reject the proposed delegation for PCTM, and then we would bring back a revised delegation for PCTM and insert the to make it clear in the board governance policy that the board reserves the power that to the shared responsibility with the CEO for hiring, evaluating, and terminating. So in short, what I would propose is that the board vote to not accept PCTM's proposed delegation and separate that from the, what is it, the risk and audit.
All the others.
Audit.
There's 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, and 6. Yeah.
Yes. And vote to approve those, and then we'll bring back a new language the next time we're all together.
Okay. Ms. Taylor?
So I make the motion to reject 6C1, attachment 1, the performance compensation talent management delegation, and send it back. But I also motion to accept. Do they have to be separate, Matt, before I do this?
You can make them all in one motion.
And I vote to accept and approve the committee delegations for 6C attachments 2 through 6.
Ms. Brown?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no on another one, so we need to take this one separately, and then I'm gonna be voting no on the risk and audit changes in delegation. So I'm sorry
Okay,
to complicate this.
Yeah, but let's finish this one, Ms. Brown, and then we'll circle back, okay?
So that would mean you want to have them pulled, Margaret?
Which one, wait a minute, Ms. Taylor, which one, Ms. Brown, you want to pull?
The risk and audit delegation.
And that's attachment what?
Let me go back, sorry.
2?
Thank you. Otherwise,
Okay,
I'll second her motion, yeah, to pull 2.
Okay, so you all of the, Ms. Taylor, your motion is to approve all of them except attachment 1 and accept and attachment 2. Because you've revised your.
So now my motion is to reject attachment 1 and accept attachments 3 through 6 now. And pull attachment 2 for discussion, and we'll vote on that.
Exactly.
Separately.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor.
Second.
It's been moved by, second by Ms. Brown. Ms. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
You're muted, Frank.
Sorry, aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Packman for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Teresa Taylor, seconded by Margaret Brown for item 6.3 with the rejection of attachment 1 and the acceptance of attachments 3 through 6, I believe.
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
And it's all ayes with Shonda Wesley being excused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Ms. Brown.
Thank you. This is on the delegation for the Risk and Audit Committee 6.2. I'm looking at item 10, where we struck out to oversee the real estate audits and public agency reviews. I disagree with it at the Risk and Audit Committee. I continue to disagree. I know that staff said that we have oversight in another role, but I don't want to eliminate any oversight roles of the board at this point in time. Thank you. So maybe I'll make a motion. I guess I'll wait till everybody else comments and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perez.
Thank you. It's probably for Marcy or maybe Matt. I lost my notes on this item. Can you refresh my memory why we're taking those 3 things out of the authority, please?
Sorry, what?
Yeah, we
Um,
may have to pull Dan being forward, but I believe they're reflected in another policy already was the reason that this was, it was a duplicate, but we can pull Dan Bienvenue forward.
Okay, you can do that, Ms. Frost. Promote Dan.
Okay.
Ms. Frost, do you mean Dan or did you mean Marlene?
The combination, probably. I think Dan will be able to answer a portion of Ms. Brown's question, and then Marlene can answer
Very good.
the other. So I see Dan coming in, but he's on mute.
Marlene too.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Bienvenue.
Yeah, good morning. I'm here. I'm sorry. Ms. Brown, can you repeat the question, please, just to make sure I'm understanding what you're asking?
Well, I think it was Mr. Perez, but Jason, do you want to go first?
Yeah, good morning, Dan. Can you refresh my memory while we're pulling those three, the real estate audits, public agency reviews out of the delegated authority, please?
We've got Marlene on as well, Dan.
Marcy mentioned that
candidly, I don't recall.
Marcy mentioned it might be in policy, and that's why. Can you just point me to that policy also? And I apologize for not sending this earlier.
Marlene, There she is.
Good morning. So the reason for the changes for the delegation was that for real estates, and I was frantically searching my notes from a couple of months ago, but I haven't been able to put my fingers on them. But my recollection is that the reason for the changes in the language was that it was duplicative and that we weren't actually changing any oversight or anything that was actually done. But the change in the language was meant to reflect the fact that those items are covered in other areas of whatever's described in terms of the audits. So like real estate's included in the internal audits that are done. And then I don't recall what was rationale for public agency, but I can search my notes as we continue to go through the meeting and then come back on when I find the exact explanation. But just to be clear, there wasn't any anticipated change in the level or the number of audits that are being performed.
Thanks, Marlene. While you do that, can you point us to where in the policy that it is reflected in there?
I will look for that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
That's all, Mr. Jones.
Okay, thank you.
Am I?
Mr. Jacobs?
Yes. While Ms. Timberlake Diadamo was speaking, I quickly searched the agenda from February, the Risk and Audit Committee delegation. It was item 5B, and the explanation, I don't have any independent recollection, but this is what the agenda item says about these changes. Removing the term real estate audits is recommended because real estate audits are already included under internal audits, and replacing public agency reviews with employer compliance reviews is to ensure the delegation language clearly includes public agencies, schools, and state agencies within the scope of these reviews. These changes align with current CalPERS auditing practices. That's it.
Thanks, Matt.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank everyone for the questions and for the comments on this. It's my understanding that we are not limiting any authority that currently exists or any delegation to the Risk and Audit Committee. And the phrase employer compliance review was intended to be a much broader, inclusive phrase than public agency reviews. So in fact, we're trying to clarify the greater breadth of responsibility that for review of all audits. I do, though, appreciate that the term real estate audits, I think we need to clearly define where that is in the other documents. And if it's the pleasure of the board, I think perhaps striking public agency reviews and replacing it with employer compliance reviews and leaving in real estate reviews may be duplicative, but it's not it's not problematic.
Okay, Ms. Brown.
Thank you, Ms. Middleton. I do appreciate that comment that we could leave real estate audits in. As Mr. Jacobs said, it's part of internal audits. That was the explanation that was given. And as you know, I've had concerns that this board, the Risk and Audit Committee, does not discuss internal audits. So I clearly want to leave this in, and I also want the policies changed on internal audits. But I would appreciate if that's a motion, Ms. Middleton. I would second leaving real estate audits in this oversight, on line 10. Thank you.
Ms. Middleton, was that a comment or a motion
I can make that a motion.
Okay. And so it's second by Ms. Brown. Questions, Ms. Ortega?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't recall what triggered these changes. Can somebody explain why this change was being proposed?
Hi, sorry, this is Marlene.
If we need to see if Belize might be available as well, but Marlene, go ahead and make.
I was just going to say that this was viewed as a cleanup item around the delegation, something that the audit folks had indicated was, as Ms. Middleton had indicated, something to clean up the language. I think as it was expressed, to align the language. So I'm not aware of any specific thing other than alignment of the language in terms of, with the employer compliance, this broadening it out, and then the fact that the real estate's included in the internal. I don't know. I don't see Belize if she's on.
No, that's enough. I thank you. That's helpful. I think that, I don't have any concern with the substance of these changes. I'm supportive of the concept of cleaning up the delegations, but I do think that when you make these kinds of changes and then people look back historically, if you're not very clear why you're doing it, then it starts to look like a substantive change. Because if you don't make clear what triggered it, what the purpose is, and maybe sort of clean it all up at one time and get things the way you think they ought to be, people wonder what then was the purpose of the change. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that it was technical and a cleanup of the delegations on the record, and then also just thinking long-term about trying to get it all the way we all think it should be, and then leaving it alone so that those questions don't come up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortega. Ms. Oliveris.
Thank you. Ms. Timberlake-D'Adamo, I think it would be helpful also to understand exactly where this delegated authority lies. For example, with real estate, this could be in vogue. It can be on the investment committee. It could also be in finance and administration. And I think for those watching, it just might be helpful to understand which committee will now have oversight of this.
So I don't expect that so what we're talking about are audits. And so the Risk and Audit Committee has oversight over the audits.
But as regard to the real estate audits, which is being proposed to be removed, would the real estate audits then be?
No, we're not proposing to remove the real estate audits. The language that was proposed is just to say that real estate audits are covered in the internal audits that are done by our auditing team. And so this was simply meant to reflect the fact that the internal audit covers all of the internal audits, including real estate. So real estate was really listed as duplicative, but I understand that it's that is causing a little bit of confusion among folks in thinking that we're actually doing something substantive with the change in the delegation, which we're not. So as I mentioned before, there is no expectation that there's going to be changes to the number of audits or the way that the audits are done in terms of this particular delegation item. And the Risk and Audit Committee does have the delegated authority for the audits.
So just so I'm clear, Real Estate Audit Authority will continue under our internal auditor activities, which we have oversight of. And we're just changing the naming from public agency reviews to employer compliance reviews.
Yes.
Is that correct?
I don't have the language in front of me, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, I think one of the things that this brings to mind in general is because this ultimately comes out of our efforts to improve governance. And we've made changes and we've reviewed our delegations to try to reduce duplication of things that appear in more than one place that can be confusing. But I think, you know, there's a real kind of opportunities for improvement in the way we prepare and communicate these things, not just among the board, because it seems like routinely confusion about what we're doing and the impact and the effect that comes out when we get to these public meetings, but also for our stakeholders. Because consistently, almost every time we've changed a delegation to make it simpler, more clear, to reduce duplication or redundant language that's a little different in multiple places, we end up with questions from either board members and or stakeholders who think we are eliminating responsibilities, we're eliminating authority, or when actually it's just the opposite. We're attempting to make it more simple and clear. So I think our strategy for preparing and doing these, we need to look at this stuff more carefully, ask our questions, understand it so that we can explain it in a way that we don't confuse our stakeholders as well. So I think we need to go back to school a little bit on how we process and do these and take a little bit more time and effort before we get to the public meeting, because in all cases, we're not trying to eliminate or change or shirk our responsibilities or change. It really remains the status quo in terms of the authority and the responsibility. We're trying to make the language less confusing, more clear, eliminate redundancies. But the way we've done it, I think we've caused confusion and had to have these discussions with almost every one of these changes in delegation. And as a result, some of them we haven't done when they would have improved our governance, but just because of the potential confusion and the misinterpretation of our intent and the effect, we've had suboptimal decision-making, in my opinion. So going forward, I hope we can do a little better on this.
Okay, that's an item for the Risk and Audit Committee to take Mr. Miller's comments and see how we might improve upon in delivering the public comments. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown?
Sorry, trying to unmute. So I dug out my notes really quickly, and my concern is that real estate audits are considered private, and maybe this is Dan or a Matt question, but they're protected under Government Code 6254.26. So we don't get to see the real estate audits because they're like private equity. We don't get to see that information. And so I want to get clarity on this, that we will still get to see the real estate audits in Risk and Audit. And I do agree with Ms. Olivares that it could belong to INVO. It could belong to the investment committee. It could also belong to finance and administration, since we know there was a problem with the books and not writing down a $582 million loss, which was considered by BDO, the auditor, to be to be not material, but it is material when it comes to staff bonuses, because that $582 million could have put staff bonuses in a different level. And so it all circles back. And so I just want to make sure that we leave real estate audits in risk and audit. And if we want to include it also in the investment committee as well as finance and admin, I'm fine with that. I want more oversight, not less. Thank you.
Ms. Taylor.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Jones. So I just want to reiterate what Mr. Miller said. If we all recall, this was part of the board governance project, the language cleanup for all of the delegated authorities to make it more plain language and less flowery, get rid of extra stuff that's not supposed to be there. And in agreement, again, with Mr. Miller, we have, the way it's presented when we do it, it seems like when there's things that we're pulling out, there's no, there isn't a way that we can see where it was or where we're putting it or where it's duplicative. So I'm wondering if direction moving forward, as we're fixing each of these for each of the different committees, and I don't know if this is a Matt question or not, should we and can we, if we're crossing something out because it's duplicative, can we have in the attachment somewhere showing where it's duplicative or in the future so that we don't have this problem? So right now we're saying that it's already included in the internal audits, but it's not spelled out that that's the case. So we're crossing out the real estate language because it's already included as an overall part of the audit system. So that wouldn't actually fix this problem right here, but is there something here in internal audits in a policy setting that's different from the delegation that says internal audits include this, and this that we can have in addition so that we're not getting confused about this? Or if the language, for example, is someplace else, can you include, oh, here's the actual language over in Invo?
Sure. My recollection, Ms. Taylor, am I on mute? No, I'm not. My recollection is that all of this was discussed and presented at the Risk and Audit Committee in February when the delegation came forward. I think the hang up here is that it wasn't replicated for the board meeting today.
Okay.
So to some extent, we're relying on people's recollections of what happened a couple of months ago and the explanations that were provided a couple of months ago. And so
maybe bringing that
your process question, I believe all that was provided, but I think the process should be, let's provide it again at when it comes before the board. So it's all handy. I believe Belize Chapui, our chief auditor, spoke at the February Risk and Audit Committee meeting about this, and I think she answered a number of questions in this regard. So going forward, we should have her here for the board meeting on the same topic.
Or even access to the transcript, so that we can see, oh, here it is, and that's why we did it.
Sure.
And I appreciate that, Matt, because I think that's, like David said, we've come across this almost every time we're fixing delegated authority. And I think the concern here is that once it's discussed in the committee, right, then it comes to the board, everybody's like, oh, well, that was 2 months ago, I forgot.
Right.
So, and then in addition, I just wanted to talk about the BDO audit and the write down and the explanation for that. Having it out in the ether that write down was a problem is not a problem when it deals with the private equity, which reports behind, a quarter behind. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. This was fully explained, and I just don't want it out on the ether that somehow or another CalPERS is not doing something correct. This is typical of private equity. And the write-down was because we're a quarter behind in reporting, and so is everyone else in the investment world for private equity.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Mrs. Oliveris.
Thank you. I would just want to follow up on.
I'm sorry, Ms. Milton first, and I think, yeah, Ms. Milton, I'm sorry, Ms. Oliveris, Ms. Milton, and then Ms. Oliveris.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was going to try to repeat the motion and see if we could move to a vote, but I see there are other people who would like to comment, so I'll defer.
Okay, and we do have 2 more requests to speak on this, and I think that all those that have, we've had 1 round, so I think I'm going to come back to you, Ms. Milton, for after Mr. Ruffino, so we could move forward on the agenda. Okay, Ms. Oliveris.
Thank you. And following up on all my colleagues' great remarks, I think we all want to move forward in some capacity. And so I think we need a little bit more clarity in terms of how the language is written. So where, for example, if we look at numbers 5 and 6, where in parens it says excluding investment risk, when we're going to make exclusions or we're going to strike out particular items, I think it would be helpful to reference where that delegated authority then lies. So we know enterprise risk and appetite and tolerances, and then excluding investment risk, which lies within the investment committee, for example, we could then cite the appropriate delegated authority there. So we know what to reference. And same thing when it comes to real estate audits. I think right now, the way this is written, it's really hard for us to understand where the duplicative authority lies. And ultimately, it's our responsibility to ensure adequate oversight and that we are providing eyes on what's happening with all of these audits.
Okay, Mr. Ruffino.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to speak in favor of the motion. I think and I appreciate Ms. Milton's motion, which I think addresses all the concerns that we are discussing to some degree. I think we all agree that the employer compliance reviews, replacing that, there's no debate, or that seems to be no issue. With respect to the real estate audit, whether there's duplicative or not, we are keeping it as the motion keeps that in place until such time we can determine that it is duplicative, then we can go back and re-edit it. But at this juncture, I think the motion as it is addresses our concerns. So we are supportive of the motion. And last but not least, I would say that, and I can't speak for everyone, but I believe we all want more oversight. I hope that nobody wants less oversight. That's a noble goal. The more oversight, the better for the board, the better for the stakeholders, the better for everyone. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and we do have a motion that was made by Ms. Milton and seconded by Ms. Brown. So Ms. Milton, would you restate your motion?
I will restate the motion, and this applies to Agenda 6C, Attachment 2, Number 10, and it would be revised to read, oversee key internal auditor activities to include internal audits, real estate audits, employer compliance reviews, financial audits, actuarial parallel valuations, and audit findings resolutions.
Okay, so that is moved by Ms. Milton, second by Ms. Brown. Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
No.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris.
Aye.
Irena Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Aye.
Shonda Wesley.
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Lisa Middleton, seconded by Margaret Brown, referring to agenda item 6C, approval of the committee delegations on attachment 2, number 10.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. So the item passes. We will now move on to information consent items. I have received no request to move anything. The item has passed, Mr. Miller. Do you have a comment on something else?
I did, but I intended to support the item, but I just want to reiterate that I did it in the interest of having us be able to move on. It has no effect. It does not increase oversight. It does not decrease oversight. We just maintain the status quo. But because of all the confusion and the misunderstandings, like with some of our other attempts at streamlining delegations, we're keeping language that hopefully we do revisit. So
Okay.
That's what I wanted to say.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so we're now on to item, there was no request to move anything from the information consent items. So we're moving on to committee reports and actions. In the 8A Investment Committee, there was no meeting, so no report. 8B Pension and Health Benefit Committee, there was no meeting. So we move to 8C Finance and Administration Committee. I call on the chair, Mr. Miller.
Okay. The Finance and Administration Committee met on April 19th, 2021. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 4B, approve the April 2021 prospective report of solicitations, contracts, purchase orders, and letters of engagement. Agenda item 4C, approve the 1959 Survivor Benefit Program Actuarial Valuation Report as of June 30th, 2020, and adopt the employer and employee monthly premiums for fiscal year 2021-22. Agenda item 4D, reappoint Scott Tarando, Chief Actuary, as the California Public Employees Retirement System representative to the California Actuarial Advisory Panel for the remainder of the 3-year term ending December 31st, 2024. Agenda item 6A, approve the 2021 to 22 annual budget in the amount of $1.888 billion and 2,843 positions. Agenda item 6B, approve the proposed elected board member percentages of time to be spent on board-related activities, or board-related duties, pardon me, based on board and committee selections held in February and March 2021. Agenda item 6C, adopt the employer and member contribution rates for the period July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2022, as set forth in the table on page 4 of the agenda item. Agenda item 6D, adopt an employer contribution rate of 22.91% for the schools pool and a member contribution rate of 7.00% for schools employees, subject to the Public Employees Pension Reform Act of 2013. Rates are applicable for the period of July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. And that's done.
On the motion of the committee, Ms. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown?
I want to vote no on 4B, so I'll just vote no on all of them to save us some time. Thank you.
Rob Fechner?
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma?
Aye.
Lisa Middleton?
Aye.
David Miller?
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris?
Aye.
Elena Ortega?
Aye.
Jason Perez?
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava?
Aye.
Teresa Taylor?
Aye.
Shonda Wesley? Excused.
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by David Miller for agenda item 8C on items for the Finance and Administration Committee for item 4B, 4C, 4D, 6A, 6B, 6C, 6D with 10 ayes, 1 no made by Margaret Brown and Shonda Wesley being excused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. And Ms. Brown, in the future, if you would just identify before we take the vote which items you'd like removed, and they'll give you an opportunity to ask that they be removed, so then you don't have to vote no on everything. Okay, so continue on, Mr. Miller.
Okay, at this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the September Finance and Administration Committee meeting. The annual actuarial valuation for the terminated agency pool, the long-term care valuation, and review of actuarial assumptions, and that'll be a first reading. The next meeting of the Finance and Administration Committee is scheduled for September 14th, 2021. And Mr. President, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. The next item on the agenda is 8D, Performance Compensation and Talent Management Committee. And for that, I call on the chair, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Performance Compensation and Talent Management Committee met on April 19, 2021. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 7A, long-term incentive program for the Chief Investment Officer position. Approve the inclusion of Global Governance Advisors recommended long-term incentive program in the Chief Investment Officer position compensation package, as set forth in the CIO compensation recommendation table in attachment 1 of the agenda item.
On the motion of the committee, discussion, Ms. Brown, your comment on this?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I want to say that our new consultant that's helping us, Global Governance Advisors, the education we had at the beginning of that very long meeting was wonderful. And I do appreciate the fact that they are listening to all board members and taking what we have to say to heart and really addressing our issues. I think it's wonderful, and hopefully we're moving in the right direction with this new consultant. Thank you.
On the motion of committee, Ms. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown.
Aye.
Rob Fechner.
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma.
Aye.
Lisa Middleton.
Aye.
David Miller.
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris.
Aye.
Irene Ortega.
Aye.
Jason Perez.
Aye.
Ramon Mubakava.
Aye.
Teresa Taylor.
Aye.
Shonda Wesley.
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Rob Fechner on agenda item 8D for the Performance Compensation and Talent Management Committee on agenda item 7A, long-term incentive program for the Chief Investment Officer position. All ayes, with Shonda Wesley being excused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. The item passes. Mr. Fechner.
Thank you. The committee received reports on the following topics: compensation governance best practices, an educational presentation session on the compensation trends and practices. The chair directed staff to defer agenda item 7B, annual review of the 2021-22 incentive metrics, to the next committee meeting. Connect Global Governance Advisors with the legal office. Work with the board's investment consultant to provide additional information on investment performance at benchmarks and related incentive payout schedules. The committee heard public comment on the following topics: incentive metrics and total fund performance. At this time, I'd like to share some highlights of what to expect at the next Performance Compensation Talent Management Committee meeting. The committee will review the annual performance plan of the Chief Executive Officer for fiscal year 2021-22. The committee will receive an update on the employee engagement survey. The committee will discuss the annual review of the 2021-22 incentive metrics. The next scheduled meeting of the committee is June 15, 2021. That completes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Fechner. Okay, the next item on the agenda is 8E, Risk and Audit Committee. For that report, I call on the chair, Ms. Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Risk and Audit Committee met on April 19, 2021. The committee recommends, and I move, the board approve the following. Agenda item 6A, 2021-22, Enterprise Compliance and Risk Management Plans. Approve the proposed 2021-22 Enterprise Compliance and Risk Management Plans.
On the motion of the committee, Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irene Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
You muted, Ms. Taylor. You're still muted, Ms. Taylor. Can you hear me, Ms. Taylor? Shake your head. You can? So shake your head if you approve. Okay,
thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Okay,
Shonda Wesley,
excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, a motion being made by Lisa Middleton for the AE Committee reports and actions on the Risk and Audit Committee for their agenda item 6A, 2021-22, Enterprise Compliance and Risk Management Plans.
Okay, thank
And
you.
that was all ayes.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. Ms. Middleton, continue.
Thank you. The chair directed staff to provide an update from BDO on the status of the summary of audit management letter comments for the year ended June 30, 2020 by the next Risk and Audit Committee meeting. At this time, I would like to share some highlights of what to expect at the June Risk and Audit Committee meeting. The Office of Audit Services Plan for 2021, the Independent Auditor's Annual Plan, the first reading of the approval to submit proposed amendments to Conflict of Interest Code to the Office of Administrative Law, the 2021 Annual Compliance Report, and the Enterprise Risk Management Framework Review. The next meeting of the Risk and Audit Committee is scheduled for June 15, 2021 in Sacramento, California. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Middleton. Okay, now we will move on to there was no Board of Governance Committee meeting, so no report. Now we will move on to item 9 on the agenda, action agenda items, proposed decisions of administrative law judges. And we do have Mr. Shiraj Shah. I see him. Yes, he will be promoted. If anyone has questions for Mr. Shiraj Shah. And I've been noted a request to pull 9A. 9A, which 9A number, Ms. Brown?
It's not a number, but it is about proposed decision. So I just had a general question. So can I ask that question?
So is your question about any of the items on the agenda?
There's something missing. The board requested a hearing on the gentleman.
Okay, well, okay, that's additional. That's not part of this, but I'll come back to you after we deal with this agenda item.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, for this, I will call on the Vice President, Mrs. Taylor, to make the motion on these items.
It's not working for her, Mr. President. Just hold up a note.
Yeah.
Oh,
We have
okay.
David working with Ms. Taylor. She is having some difficulties.
Okay, I guess I have to read this then. Okay. I move to adopt the proposed decision at agenda items 9A1 through 5 with the minor modifications argued by staff to agenda items 9A2, 3, and 5. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Miller. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Daisy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Ms. Taylor, shake your head if you approve. Ms. Taylor? I guess she's totally mute now. Okay, go forward.
okay, Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Henry Jones, seconded by David Miller.
Oh.
And it's on agenda items 9A, 1 through 5 with the minor modifications.
Thank you. Now we go to agenda item 9B, and I move to deny the petitions for reconsideration at agenda items 9B1 through 9B9. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, who is that? Oh, Mr. Fechner, okay. Mrs. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubacava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Go ahead, Ms.
Shonda
Taylor.
Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Henry Jones, seconded by Rob for agenda item 9B, petitions for reconsideration, which is to deny the petitions, 9B through 9B9.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Hopper. Now, Mrs. Brown, your comment.
Thank you. At last month's Board of Administration meeting on proposed decisions, the board had a lengthy discussion about one particular case, City of Redondo Beach, and we voted for a full hearing and also additional training. We wanted more information on these processes and procedures. And so I don't see that gentleman's name on here. And so I'm wondering, does it take 30 to 60 days for these to come back and be put on the agenda, or what specifically happens? Did the employee say no, they didn't want the additional hearing? I'm just curious as to why it's not on the agenda and the board has received no information about that. And then when might we get the training that we've asked for? Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to ask Mr. Jacobs and Mr. Sherrod Shaw to chime in if necessary. But we did have some training, Ms. Brown, but I'll call on Mr. Jacobs to respond specifically.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, I'll speak to the training, but we can have Matt speak to the case.
Okay,
Or, yeah, that would be on the June agenda.
okay,
Both.
Okay.
That Matt answered both. Both would be on the June agenda.
okay.
The training would come through the PHBC.
Thank you. So normally when I don't know the timelines for the hearing. So basically the board asked for a full board hearing. So I would assume the plaintiff has so many days to get additional information. And I don't know exactly what the process is. So.
Yeah, it's going to be, it was extended by the governor's executive order. I don't think that actually matters. We have, I believe, 100 days after the board decides to have a full board hearing to schedule it. That may or may not have been extended by the governor's executive orders, but in any event, we're in June, we'll be well within the timeline for doing that. And it isn't something that, you know, you can just snap your fingers and put together. So
Thank you. I just wasn't sure what the process was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes that item. We will now go to 9C, State Legislative Proposal, Technical Amendments. Is that Mr. Brown or who's handling this one, Ms. Frost?
Yes. So we can promote Danny. There he is.
Good morning, Mr. President, board members. Danny Brown, CalPERS team member. I do have 3 action items for you today. The first one is asking the board to sponsor additional technical and clarifying changes to the PEARL. The board sponsored 2 items at the November meeting, which are included in the Retirement Omnibus Bill SB 634. This item requests the board sponsor 2 specific clarifying items. One conforms the paperwork process for CalPERS members electing to continue as CalPERS members when they are subsequently employed in a CalSTRS covered position. The provision does not change any of the eligibility requirements related to members making this election. It simply makes a change to which entities receive the election form paperwork. The other provision makes clarifying change to the notification provisions for a state-funded health benefits program for the surviving spouses of specified safety officers. The proposed language would clarify that CalPERS can receive notification of a safety officer's death from any reliable and verifiable source. The current law could be interpreted as limiting how CalPERS can be notified. We believe these changes are without controversy and simply clarifying current law. If the board approves, we will seek to have these provisions included into SB 634. With that, I'll stop and answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I see no questions. So the state legislative proposal, technical amendment to the Public Employees Retirement Law. I need a motion.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. Miller.
Second.
Second by Ms. Taylor. Welcome back, Ms. Taylor. Okay. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacey Oliveris,
Aye.
Irena Ortega,
Aye.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Packard for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by David Miller, seconded by Teresa Taylor for agenda item 9C.
Okay, thank you. The item passes. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Hopper. 9D, Senate Bill 411, revision of working after retirement sanctions. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. This second item is asking the board to adopt a support position on Senate Bill 411, authored by Senator Cortese. This bill removes the mandate to reinstate a retired member for violations of the working after retirement laws, while allowing reinstatement if circumstances warrant it. The bill may seem familiar because it is nearly identical to AB 2365 from last year. As you may recall, the board adopted a support position on that bill. Unfortunately, the bill was not heard in the second house, largely due to the compressed legislative calendar. In that light, the bill was reintroduced this year by the new chair of the Senate Labor, Public Employment, and Retirement Committee. As noted in the board agenda item, this change in law would provide the opportunity to resolve these violations more efficiently. Rather than reinstatement, retirees could pay penalties consistent with the amount of time worked in violation. Reinstatement involves significant costs, including loss of accrued COLA for the retirees. If the action is appealed, CalPERS bears administrative costs to pursue. As we recommended last year, we believe a support position is consistent with our strategic goal of reducing complexity and our overall focus on reducing administrative costs. This bill does not change the rules and requirements for retired members who work after retirement, including the 960 rule, the 180-day sit-out requirement, and requirements related to pay rate and necessary skills. This bill does not reduce CalPERS' authority to impose reinstatement, but does provide an additional option for these violations. This bill did pass out of the Senate Policy Committee yesterday on a 5-0 vote. And with that, I'm available for questions.
Okay, Mr. Fechner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for bringing this forward. I first of all want to thank Senator Cortese for putting this forward this year. I think it's a very important bill for our members, especially for the school employees. This protects them from lots of times from mistakes that the employer had made, not them themselves, but yet they're holding the big bag of that cost. So I certainly hope this continues to move forward like it did yesterday. And with that, I would move the motion forward, please.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Mr. Miller. Mrs. Hopper, please call the roll.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irene Ortega,
Abstain?
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubalcava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Packard for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have the motion being made by Rob Fechner, seconded by David Miller on agenda item 9D. I have 10 ayes, 1 abstention by Irena Ortega, and Shonda Wesley being excused.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hopper. The item passes. 9E, Assembly Bill 845, Disability Retirement COVID-19. Mr. Brown.
Thank you. This last item is asking the board to adopt a support position on Assembly Bill 845, authored by Assemblymember Rodriguez. The bill establishes COVID-19 related illnesses as a rebuttable presumption for disability retirement that the employee contracted COVID-19 from the work environment. As noted in the board item, this bill will not require any administrative changes for CalPERS team members. In addition, the bill will not alter the disability retirement eligibility for our members. For our members who are eligible for disability retirement, current law does not require the injury or illness that causes the disability to be work-related. For our members who are eligible for industrial disability retirement, such as our safety classifications, current law enacted last year establishes a rebuttable presumption for COVID-19 for workers' compensation claims. Because an IDR requires an accepted workers' comp claim, the rebuttable presumption is already built into our industrial disability retirement process. However, this bill would provide more assurance that members who can no longer work due to contracting COVID-19 will be eligible for disability retirement. This bill includes a sunset clause of January 1st, 2023. This bill also has passed out of its first policy committee last week. And with that, I am available for questions.
Okay, Ms. Taylor.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you, Danny, for bringing this forward, because this is really important. I know it really doesn't change anything for our information, but a lot of employees feel like they have to prove. And there are these odd symptoms that continue after people have contracted COVID. I think it's really important that we go through with that comment. And I'm hearing feedback. Are you guys hearing me okay?
Okay. We hear the feedback, but we hear you.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to recommend to adopt a support position on Assembly Bill AB 845.
Mr. Henry, I will second.
Okay. Who was that on the second? Oh, Mr. Rubalcava. Okay, moved by Ms. Taylor, second by Mr. Rubalcava. Ms. Hopper, please.
Margaret Brown,
Aye.
Rob Fechner,
Aye.
Frank Ruffino for Fiona Ma,
Aye.
Lisa Middleton,
Aye.
David Miller,
Aye.
Stacy Oliveris,
Aye.
Irina Ortega,
Abstain.
Jason Perez,
Aye.
Ramon Rubicava,
Aye.
Teresa Taylor,
Aye.
Shonda Wesley,
Excused.
Lynn Paquin for Betty Yee.
Aye.
Mr. President, I have a motion being made by Teresa Taylor, seconded by Ramon Rubicava on agenda item 9E. And I have 10 ayes, 1 abstention made by Irina Ortega and Shonda Wesley being excused.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Hopper. The item passes. We now will move on to information agenda items. 10A, state and federal legislation update. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President and board members. Danny Brown, CalPERS team member again. This is our state and federal legislative update. On the state side, the legislature is right in the middle of bills being heard in their first House policy committees. Most bills face the deadline of April 30th to get out of the first policy committee, and if not, they become what's known as a 2-year bill. Starting with our sponsored bills, as I noted in one of the previous items, the Retirement Omnibus Bill SB 634 contains 2 sponsored provisions and has passed the Senate. We expect this bill to be heard in the Senate Assembly Policy Committee in June. Our other sponsored bill, AB 386, regarding disclosure of private debt investment information, passed out of the Assembly PERS Committee last week on a 7-0 vote and is now pending action in the Assembly Judiciary Committee. Our team is continuing to review and analyze bills that are amended and moved through the legislature. I just wanted to maybe highlight a few of those bills. First, one of the 2 divestment bills related to the Republic of Turkey, SB 457, by Senator Portantino, passed out of Senate Labor, Public Employment and Retirement Committee yesterday on a 4-1 vote after much dialogue. This bill would require CalPERS and CalSTRS to provide a separate investment portfolio that does not include Turkish investments to any city or school employer that requests it. We have met with the author and his staff to understand what they are seeking to achieve and to explain the challenges of divestment in general, as well as significant difficulties of allowing contracting agencies to make investment allocation decisions. But we will continue to work with the author as that bill goes through the legislature. There were a decent volume of non-COVID related health bills. So let me just touch on 2 of those too. AB 1130 by Assembly Member Wood would create the Office of Healthcare Affordability to gather data on healthcare drivers and develop strategies to control cost increases. This effort is coordinated with the governor's office, who had a similar proposal last year before the focus of the administration shifted to the pandemic response. The bill has been recently amended and has a number of moving parts, so we will continue to analyze and review this important bill. And this is a bill that we think that this board can get behind, and so we will be looking to bring this forward at some point. The next bill I also wanted to mention is by Assemblymember Wood. This is AB 1132, which shows on your bill list as dealing with healthcare consolidations. Since this was a bill that was of interest to many of you last year, I did want to let you know that the author has decided to make this a 2-year bill. And in fact, since our board item went out, it has been amended already to deal with Medi-Cal. So, but we will continue to work with the author's office on this issue too. And at some point it may be ready for consideration. So now I just want to move to the federal update. And just let me start with a few activities in the investment area. First, and I think most important for us, is that on April 14th, Gary Gensler was confirmed by a 53-45 vote of the U.S. Senate to lead the Security and Exchange Commission. And then he was sworn into office this past Saturday. He will obviously be busy from day one on a wide variety of issues, but we do look forward to working with him and his team on the SEC's important function of investor protection and capital formation. And to that point, we are currently working on a response to the SEC's request for input on climate change disclosures. Our response will build on our recent congressional testimony and letters we have submitted to SASB and IFRS. Last week, we also submitted a support letter to Representative Gregory Meeks on HR 1277, which is titled Improving Corporate Governance Through Diversity Act of 2021. This is a bill that we supported last session that requires public companies to report diversity data and veteran status that is self-identified and voluntarily submitted among their boards of directors and executive officers. This bill is expected to pass out of the House Financial Services Committee today. In the healthcare area, Xavier Becerra has also been confirmed as the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. We have recently offered him our congratulations on his confirmation, and we are excited that there will be an opportunity to work with his office and on several of our healthcare policy priorities. Lowering prescription drug costs will no doubt be a main area of focus as committees start their work, and we have already begun to strategize with other public purchasers and key partners in DC on how best to move this issue forward, and should have more to report on this topic as the year moves on. And then just let me end by mentioning that on the retirement side, Representative Richard Neal reintroduced his Public Service Protection and Fairness Act. This bill creates a new, more proportional windfall elimination provisional formula for those who are first eligible to receive Social Security before 2023. This new formula does not apply. They get a monthly additional payment called a rebate. For those who are first eligible to receive Social Security starting in 2023, they get either the current formula or this new formula, whichever is higher. And this is a bill that this board has supported in the past, so we will continue to look at it and see if this is something that we will send a letter in on. With that, I'll stop and see if there's any questions.
Okay, thank you for the report, Mr. Brown. We do have a question, Ms. Middleton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to start with what's essentially a comment and then ask a question. HR 1277 is certainly progress in terms of tracking information, but I would note HR 1277 does not include sexual orientation or gender identity. Both are categories which in California, we have passed legislation to require boards of directors to do reporting. And I would hope that we at CalPERS will take every effort that we can to influence this bill as it moves forward to be fully inclusive of everyone. Second is a question on AB 1092, Assemblymember May's bill. As I read this, it would prohibit an individual who's retired from CalPERS and is collecting health insurance to continue in that insurance if they subsequently are employed by another employer who has comparable coverage. It's unclear to me what problem it is that the Assembly member is trying to solve by this. And very concerning as to what would be the definition of comparable and the likelihood that a individual who has retired could find themselves in an argument as to whether or not their healthcare coverage that they receive from CalPERS is in danger because they're working for someone else now. And is it or is it not comparable coverage? Mr. Brown, can you comment?
Yes, that is an excellent point, Ms. Middleton, and one that we have made both to the author's office as well as committee consultants. In our conversations with the author's staff is, the focus of this bill is to control what they think are, unfunded liabilities around OPEB. So they see this as a way to tackle those liabilities. So if you retire from a CalPERS covered employer and now you go to work in the private sector and your employer is offering you health care coverage, then this is a way to save that public employer money in retirement. So, but I think your points, there are a number of administrative issues. One is, how do we track these individuals? How often do we have to find them and ask them if they're working and if they have health insurance? And what is, as you said, what is comparable? Is it just comparable to for the member? Do they have to provide dependent coverage? Do they have to provide reimbursement? So there are a number of, I think, issues, not only the fact that many of these members have negotiated these health benefits and it's part of their collective bargaining agreement. So now you're interfering with, collective bargaining. and vesting schedules. And now we have state employees who are also paying towards their retiree health. And so they've paid into it, and now you're telling them they can't have access to it. So I think there's a number of administrative as well as policy issues with this proposal.
Thank you, Danny. That's helpful. Full disclosure, this would potentially apply to me.
Ms. Middleton,
and I will be reaching out to Assemblymember Mays, who I know quite well.
if I can make a comment to your earlier point, Ms. Middleton. So we did support an amendment to that bill on gender identity and sexual orientation, but it recently was dropped as recently as this morning. But we are on record in support of the amendment as it was done just, I think, last week. So we will continue to monitor. There's another opportunity for us to weigh in to see if we can get that amendment reintroduced.
Great, thank you.
And on that point, Ms. Frost, I think that also there was efforts to include ethnicity, which we've been unsuccessful. So I take that as a direction to report back on both the sexual orientation and the ethnicity efforts that we're making to be identified on corporate boards. I appreciate that. Okay.
So this is Danny, if I may, just to clarify, I guess on HR 1277, it currently does include, it says gender, but it's obviously not defined or specific. And then it's ethnic diversity and racial diversity. So they have added an ethnicity and racial diversity to the bills. And as Ms. Frost mentioned, there were some discussions about, as the bill was going through markup today, to add sexual orientation and gender identity, but it was decided to it was pulled back. But I assume if this bill gets out of committee today, that there may be an opportunity when it moves to the floor to try that.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Frost. Go ahead, Ms. Frost.
I will.
And also, I think keep us updated on what efforts are being made at SEC in regard to these two items, too, requiring corporate boards to respond to these questions. So that's a direction to report.
We will. And our June agenda, investment committee agenda, has a full update on all of these efforts.
Okay, sounds great.
Providing that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Mr. Brown?
That is it.
Okay, Ms. Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jones. And I just want to kind of jump on the bandwagon here for HR 1277 and make sure that we're following through on this along with the information from the SEC. But it's important that we are inclusive, fully inclusive, and I'm glad that we are working on that. And then on AB 1092, I agree that this is odd. And the way it's written, yeah, it's important. We are paying now for our retirement health care. Seems to me this bill shouldn't go through, period. I don't think there's an amendment to this that can make this any better. But and full disclosure, this would be me too. So but we have negotiated these benefits. I think it's it would be really hurtful to retirees. So say you take a position for a couple of years, they offer you healthcare, and suddenly your retiree healthcare has gone away. So I think it's really important that we follow up on this and either make sure it's fixed or it doesn't go through.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Taylor. Okay, that includes Mr. Brown. Any parting comments?
No, thank you. Yes, we will continue to monitor all these issues and report back each month.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 10B, summary of board direction. Ms. Frost.
All right, I recorded the most recent one around keeping the board updated on amendments related to sexual orientation and gender identity on the bill going through Congress, as well as ensuring that the June update includes all of our work on disclosures related to human capital and other metrics.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we go to public comment. I understand we may have some requests to speak. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President, we have two callers. The first caller with a private equity stakeholder project, Alyssa Giacchino.
Thank you. Hello.
Stand by, Mr. President. We are having problems with our call-in studio. Stand by. Go ahead, Alyssa.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. My name is Alyssa Giacchino with the Private Equity Stakeholder Project. CalPERS is an investor with private equity firm Ares Management. CalPERS has committed more than $1.3 billion to Ares funds in the last year. Ares last year partnered with Premium Partners to acquire Front Yard Residential, a single-family rental landlord with nearly 15,000 homes around the U.S. Affiliates of Front Yard Residential have filed more than 350 eviction actions since the beginning of this year, 2021, including more than 270 eviction filings in majority Black DeKalb and Clayton counties in Georgia, a state that I believe was alluded to earlier by the chair. Front Yard Residential has also filed to evict residents at much higher rates in DeKalb and Clayton counties than it has in majority white Polk and Brevard counties in Florida. In order to protect Americans from contracting and spreading COVID-19, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, recently extended the national eviction moratorium through June 2021 and noted that $52 billion in federal rent relief had been set aside for an estimated 12 million renters who own back rent. Despite the CDC eviction moratorium, Ares-owned Front Yard Residential has continued to file and advance residential eviction cases. A number of these cases are complaints for non-payment of rent, which are specifically covered by the CDC eviction moratorium. An organization violating the CDC eviction moratorium may be subject to a fine of up to $200,000 per event. In late March, the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau stated that they would be investigating evictions by, quote, multi-state landlords and, quote, private equity firms. The FTC and CFPB noted, quote, unfortunately, there are reports that major multi-state landlords are forcing people out of their homes despite the government prohibitions or before tenants are aware of their rights. Depriving tenants of their rights is unacceptable. Many of the tenants at risk of eviction are older Americans and people of color who already experience heightened risks from COVID-19, unquote. Following Ares' acquisition of Front Yard Residential, the firm has sought to advance eviction cases against multiple residents who had filed CDC hardship declarations. We, the Private Equity Stakeholder Project, have reached out to Ares multiple times to discuss evictions by Front Yard Residential. The firm has not responded. Please ask Ares Management to ensure its housing investments comply with the law and with the CDC eviction moratorium and do not displace residents, especially residents of color. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Frost, could you just have someone check to be sure that our companies we invest in are following the law?
We are not invested in this fund with Ares, but we'll certainly have Ann Simpson's team or a member of her team reach out and make me informed the caller of our position.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fox.
Yes, Mr. President, we have Mr. J.J. Jelensik representing himself.
Misuse of corporate credit cards, failure to track salary advances, violation of policies and controls on internal trading, unauthorized access and dissemination of personnel records. What do all these have in common? A lack of internal controls, the fact that the board knows about them and finds them acceptable. Why do I say that? In the case of the personnel records, this board is using trust funds to fund the legal defense of the perpetrator. In all cases, even with board knowledge, the board has continued to rate the CEO as exceeds expectations, even though she is responsible for managing the staff. The board has been told time and time again that if there is mismanagement, it is to hold the CEO responsible. I have not mentioned the lack of internal controls that led to the theft of some $685,000 that went undetected over a 4-year period. Maybe the board will do something this time, but history doesn't offer much hope. Although I am glad to hear that the barn door is now locked. So much for accountability and fiduciary duty. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Fox?
Mr. President, we have one more caller from the Center for Justice, Jen J.
Hello, my name is Jen Jane. I'm an organizer with Renters United for Justice, and I'm actually here to speak on behalf of a renter who couldn't be here today. She's fallen ill, but I did manage to get down a comment from her, so I'm going to just read off a little bit of what she said. So this is speaking as Ariana. My name is Ariana Anderson, and I've been a renter with Havenbrook Homes for 7 years. During this time, I've experienced electrical problems, like the power shorting out. I found black mold in my house. There's lead paint chipping. The popcorn ceiling in my bedroom has fallen and fallen on me. We've been locked in the bathroom due to faulty doorknobs and had to call the police department to get us out. We have leaks everywhere. On top of all this, they've raised the rent, charged us fees every month without explanation, and they are difficult to get in contact with. And this is me speaking as an organizer who has spoken and has had many conversations with Ariana. She has yet to have any of these problems. She's yet to have these problems addressed in her home and continues to experience massive disrepair in her home, and is asking for to not continue investing in Havenbrook Homes, and she wanted me to. That's what she wanted me to share with you all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fechner.
No, sir, I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. Okay, so Mr. Fox?
Yes, Mr. President, that concludes all public comment for today's board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brown?
Thank you. I had requested to comment after the first speaker. I know you did direct the CEO to respond to the commenters' concerns about Aries management. And what I think I heard Ms. Frost say is that we are not involved in the fund that is doing that. But I just want to be sure that we hold a lot of private equity in real estate assets, and I want to make sure that we are not evicting tenants, and we take the issues seriously, because there was some laughter going on in that response. So I know that's not what was intended, but I want to make sure that we are, to the extent we can, I mean, we're just an LP and we really can't do much about it, but I do want to make sure that any private equity real estate holdings we have, that they are not evicting tenants when they're not supposed to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, so I see no additional requests to speak from board members. So we'll adjourn now into closed session. Oh, wait a minute. First of all, Mr. Fox, was that it? You did say that was it, right? I think I heard him.
Yes, Mr. President, that concludes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll adjourn now into closed session for items 1 to 3 from the closed session agenda. This will include the following litigation matters: Marzick et al. V. CalPERS, Wedding et al. V. CalPERS. We'll also receive the General Counsel's update on pending litigation. So at this time, the board members will exit this open session meeting and connect to the closed session meeting. To the members of the public watching on the live stream, the open session Board of Administration meeting will convene immediately following this closed session. So thank you for joining.
Can we take a comfort break?
Yes. Let's say 11:05.
Thank you.
I think just indicate that we have reconvened the open session board meeting. And we're back in open session, and this adjourns this month's board and committee meetings. The board's next meeting is the PHBC meeting in May, and we will see you all then. Thank you, and have a good rest of the week, and we will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.